Hey, Keith, what's up? It's the Culture Detective here, investigating your favorite albums. And today I will be doing an album review on the latest Freddie Gibbs and the Alchemist record, Alfredo. So, Freddie Gibbs is a West Coast Californian rapper, gangsta rapper, and he had been dropping a lot of rap albums for a while already. In the middle of the 2010s, he and the legendary hip hop producer Madlib released the album called Pinata, and it had became one of my favorite rap albums of the decade. Also, their song Thuggin' ended up as one of my favorite hip hop songs of the decade as well. And then fast forward to the year 2019, they collaborated once again and released Bandana, which I absolutely love as well. The track Crime Pays, the other track that features Anderson .Paak, they are both excellent. And in the year 2020, this year, he and another pretty famous, well known, maybe not as well known as Madlib, but still pretty well known, with a pretty high status, The Alchemist came up with Alfredo, which isn't as ambitious, or should I say, as fruitful, eventful, or as packed as the Madlib collab albums. This album is only 35 minutes long. It doesn't have a substantial amount of tracks on it, but it's still a really, really solid album. If I could use three adjectives to describe this album, it would be dreamy, ethereal, and chill. Pretty much every single track on this album are dreamy, spacey, airy, and pretty low key and stripped back. So if you're into the kind of hyped up, super loud, noisy, aggressive, fun, playful kind of hip hop, this may not be the album for you. But if you're into artistic hip hop with high quality production that's very lush, grand, but also serene and slow, but also dreamy and spacey, well, here you go. And yeah, while this kind of hip hop is not my favorite kind of hip hop because a lot of rappers fail to sound interesting on beats like this, Freddie Gibbs, he's an exception. Freddie Gibbs' very muscular gangsta flows that are very consistent and solid all the time works really well on these very light, ethereal beats and instrumentals, and it's just a really perfect combination. And while yeah, every single track is pretty much this style on this album. Some tracks here they stand out a little more. Maybe the instrumentals have a few more extra layers. Maybe they sound a little different. There are tracks on this album that are a little less eventful, but still overall, this is probably one of the most cohesive albums I've heard all year because every single track just falls into the same specific style of sort of slow, dreamy gangsta rap. The album starts off with 1985, which is a pretty nice taster. It has its dreamy, soulful guitars that sounds like it's pulled out of an old school vintage, maybe a late 80s, early 90s rock song. And the beat is incredibly slow and that's pretty much it. Freddie Gibbs' flow is fantastic right from the start, and even though instrumentally it didn't wow me all that much, it's still a really nice tone setter for the rest of the album. The second track, God is Perfect, has its grimy, worrisome pianos as well as a very spacey drum beat on top of it. And Freddie Gibbs totally steals the show on this track with his first line, microphone check, 1, 2, mic checker. And the flows get incredibly fast towards the end when he starts using his triplet flows, and also we get some smart references and smart lyrics here and there, like the UGK reference. And the third track is one of my favorites on the album, if not my favorite. The track Scottie Beam features Rick Ross, and the pianos on this track, they are absolutely gorgeous. They are breathtakingly beautiful. We get these pianos that are very light, glamorous, and heavenly, which is totally the kind of beat that Rick Ross would usually rap on. So Rick Ross's feature here, it actually fits really well. Rick Ross and Freddie Gibbs, they have a lot of chemistry, and we also have the lyrics on this album. The first two lines especially, it feels very now. It feels very 2020, even though it's not really written in the recent times, and it just goes to show how timeless this kind of issue is. And basically the first two lines is, my execution will be televised, the revolution is the genocide. And yeah, it's quite thought-provoking and badass couple of lines from Freddie, I must admit. The fourth track, Look at Me, is not one of the better tracks on the album. The instrumentals are incredibly slow, hazy, and dreamy. And the flow of Freddie Gibbs is also very sparse and airy on this track, not as watertight as many other tracks on this album. So together, it's just a really slow and uneventful track. However, the next track, Frank Lucas featuring Benny the Butcher, is a high on the album. While, yes, it's still very slow, we get this very airy bed of synths. We also get these slow, really fat beats on this thing that are very steady. And it just creates a very serious, badass tone to the track. And then we have Benny the Butcher, who's amazing on this track. Where one of the lines, he came up with a lot of really clever lyrics and one-liners. But right here, we have, I sold lines to abusers, now I abuse y'all with lines. All right, I'm hydrated. The next track, Something to Rap About, is another highlight on the album for me. The track features Tyler, the Creator, none other than Tyler, the Creator, one of the most creative and interesting artists. I mean, not only hip hop artists, but artists in general, of our generation nowadays. Tyler, the Creator. And yeah, his feature on this track is really dynamic, easily the best feature on the entire album. And Freddie Gibbs' performance is really muscular and solid and cold-blooded, and then with Tyler, the Creator, being a little goofy, a little cartoony, but also very expressive, and together it's just such a good combination, very great chemistry. I also really like the instrumentals of the track. We get these really relaxing, sweet guitars that are very nice. Oh my god. On to the second half of the album, we have the track Baby Shit, and it's one of the lesser eventful tracks on the album. Again, we get a very nice, really well produced layer bed of airy synths, and on top we get these really crispy beats with a really nice sort of a crunchy tone to it. The flow, the lyrics, they are in the usual Freddie Gibbs wheelhouse, and the track overall is just okay. Pretty much the same goes for the next track, Babies and Fools, except the instrumentals is a little different. We get this little keyboard lick, which reminds me of some sort of, 90s American sitcom of sorts, or I guess in a good way, it kind of reminds me of supermarket music. And then we get the Conway feature on this track, which is actually not bad, but in comparison with the Benny the Butcher and the Tyler the Creator, it's just okay. The second to last track, Skinny Suge, is a fantastic track. Instrumentally, it does give off sort of this interlude vibe, but in a good way. We get these airy, spacey instrumentals, doodly, winding guitars that are melancholic. Freddie Gibbs raps in a very aggressive and intense way on this track, but the lyrics rather tell a different story because they are easily the most tragic, sad, and reflective on the entire album, where Freddie Gibbs sort of reflects on his way of living and how it's damaging himself and the people around him. And it's like on every single album that he does, there must be that one track that is just personal and reflective and thought-provoking, and this is one of them. And it's, yeah, especially with the instrumentals, it really stand out really well. And the ending of the album is called All Glass, and it is like a, yeah, again, moody, ethereal, dreamy, but there is a huge West Coast hip hop vibe on it, a huge West Coast hip hop spin on it. So it feels summery, even somewhat sweet. It feels very gangsta. The synths on this track, they have a very nice, windy, ethereal tone to it. So the texture is really nice. And lyrically, Freddie Gibbs sort of talk about his thoughts in a religious way. There's a religious flavor to the lyrics on this track. So yeah, again, overall, this even though this isn't my favorite kind of hip hop, I still think this is one of the most cohesive and solid album of the year so far. Freddie Gibbs' performances and flows and deliveries are fantastic on this album. The beats, they are ethereal, they are dreamy and hazy, sometimes very beautiful and lush, sometimes very blurry in a memorable way. And overall, I don't have much to say about this album. My favorite track here is Scottie Beam. My least favorite is Look at Me. I am giving Freddie Gibbs and the Alchemist's Alfredo a strong 7 to a light 8 out of 10. So, have you listened to the latest Freddie Gibbs and the Alchemist's Alfredo? From 1 to 10, how much you rate it? Like if you like it, and subscribe if you want more. And thanks for watching.